This is the most important thing that you need to do now there has been a rate cut.
Now that there's been a rate cut, does that mean everyone's mortgage will go down?
It should, but it doesn't.
I've got a story for you guys. It's crazy.
That's blowing my fucking mind. You're not on top of your laundry, let alone your loans.
Would you believe me if I told you that the very building that we're in, the loan for it, my rate did not reduce in February at all?
Oh, what?
I'm Dom Trimboli, founder of Refinancer, and today I'm here with Robert D'Agostino, who recently just won Mortgage Broker of the Year.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here, Dom.
Yep. And joining us as well is Patrick Stewart, a multiple-time Platinum Broker.
Thanks, mate. Pleasure to be here.
The RBA has just announced a 25 basis point drop. The cash rate has dropped from 4.1% to 3.85%. That's the second rate drop of the year, and it's massive, massive news. So, Rob, how are you feeling right now?
I'm super excited. This changes a lot. Now we've seen the rate cut early in February and now the rate cut now. So clients that were coming to us prior to February are seeing pretty big changes now to the amount they're able to borrow. I've even seen some clients able to borrow up to 100K extra.
Wow.
So absolutely massive stuff we're seeing here.
Yeah, borrowing capacity is just going to go through the roof now with not one but two changes. And Paddy, what about you, mate? What do you make of this?
It's about time. I think it's honestly about time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like inflation has been coming down pretty steadily, pretty sharply as well. It's about time, and it's a welcoming change for a lot of Australians here now who they felt the pressure and the pinches of the cost of living crisis that we've been having. And I think even if it was just a small drop, not the big drop that we just had, any little bit helps with people right now. So that extra $20, $30 a week or however it might be, it's awesome.
You go to the supermarket, you literally hear people in the aisles just commenting on what things cost. It's just all over. It's everyone is concerned with cost.
You can pay $4 for a loaf of bread nowadays. It's ridiculous.
I saw a carton of eggs for $13.
Whoa.
$13 for a carton of eggs.
Well, they're covered in gold. What the hell? That is ridiculous.
The thing that really sticks with me is future projections. The big four have all forecasted future rate drops. So it's likely this is not the last one. If anything, there's probably two or three more. One major lender they've even predicted a whole nother % drop within the next 12 months. So if you look at the cash rate now, another 1% lower than that, what effect is that going to have? If you look at from January to now, you've got clients that in January or late last year, they went to an auction, they couldn't buy. And that same client now goes to an auction, and it's a very, very different story, isn't it, Rob?
Well, even any little difference to the rates makes a major difference. So I've got a client that his original budget, he was looking to try and get a property at 900K. He came to us initially for a pre-approval late last year. Max he could get was about 800. Now, after this latest cut, I've rerun his borrowing capacity, and now he finally hits that 900K purchase price.
An extra $100,000 in what, 4 months?
It's not to be sneezed at.
It's not to be sneezed at, Paddy.
Pretty good.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Rob, because a few years back when the RBA announced that they weren't changing the cash rate for 4 years, a lot of people went out and thought, great, cheap lending, it's time to upgrade the car, it's time to go on that holiday, it's time to do all this sort of stuff. And now that their rates have gone up over the last couple of years, they can't afford to pay these debts anymore. So specifically, I had a client who came to me in December last year. They had a very similar scenario where they had maxed out their credit cards, they had upgraded the family car as well, and their debts were just at such a high level because of the interest rate changes that they just couldn't maintain everything. And they were actually looking at the fact that they might have to sell their house just to cover everything and start fresh.
Crazy.
And then enter 2025.
And then enter 2025, and these rates have come down to a point, and they were so close. They were so close in meeting the bank serviceability criteria. We tried a bunch of different options, just could not make it work at the time. And now with these rate cuts, we can consolidate everything. The equity was fine because of the property capital growth over the last 4 or 5 years. It was more the serviceability.
Isn't it crazy how one announcement, you go from just an announcement out there now enables you to save like $4 or $5 grand a year.
These clients are saving $2 grand a month just in repayments because of what we've been able to do and what these one simple drop in rates has allowed them to accomplish. It's next level.
It's life-changing stuff, really, to save that much now per month. It puts them in a position where they were struggling to feel more comfortable.
When I told them they were approved, they started crying. because they can keep that property that they loved. They don't have to sell anything. And they did learn a valuable lesson, in financial behavior and what to expect. And
which is don't max yourself out because you can.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's the age-old saying. It goes with everything, but it's especially prevalent when you're looking at buying a house or getting any sort of lending.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fellas, Labor's in power now. The tariffs have kind of cooled down. Unemployment is pretty stable. Rob, if I'm a homeowner right now, what am I thinking? What am I doing?
A homeowner now, well, early next year, I believe, under Labor, Albanese will he actually lifts those caps that he's got on that 5% first-time guarantee product. So that was his promise he made prior to getting in as a part of the election, prior to staying on against Peter Dutton. So, for example, here in Adelaide, that 5% deposit product, you were limited to properties at 600K. But let's be honest, some people want to buy in areas closer to the city that might cost 800, 900. Now, to actually release that cap and basically have no limit, now people can buy in those better areas or where they want to live with 5% deposit. And the same as Interstate, of course, not just Adelaide, all across the country. So
opens a few doors.
Yeah, definitely. Opens up the doors. There's more options. And it's a good product because with the high cost of living at the moment, how high rent is, people just can't save a 20% deposit. It's unrealistic. So the 5% deposit product is the key for first home buyers, that product.
Yeah.
And people should be really taking advantage of that one. So
yeah. And Paddy, what about you? If you're a homeowner right now, what would you be doing? What would you be thinking, or what would you be doing?
With the rates starting to trend down, I'd seriously be reevaluating my position and looking at that, getting that second property or even that next property. Equity is going to continue to grow. Prices are going to continue to go up. If history is any indication, they will continue to go. And if you're not in the right position, you're not leveraged properly, you can't take advantage of that equity that you might create in that property. So it would be silly to not reconsider your position and just get an understanding of, okay, what's my borrowing capacity? What options are available both in the city that I'm living in, but also interstate as well? And what opportunities can I take advantage of?
Yeah, well, people shouldn't limit themselves to investing just in this state.
No, obviously, definitely not. They should do their research, of course, but...
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being a borderless investor because if the property market's too crazy in your current state, it doesn't mean in a different state, the entry level for an investment with a decent rental income in an area that could see capital growth is a lot lower than your own state. Yeah, you don't need to stick to your state, which a lot of people think they do need to invest in their own backyard.
No, and correct. And to further that point, you could also put that down as part of the reason why Adelaide went through such a huge market correction recently, because Adelaide was so undervalued for a very long time. But as property prices came up, especially during COVID and after it, Eastern investors especially realized how much of an untapped potential Adelaide had.
Yeah, we've gone from 5 times your income to something like 9 times your income for the average property here.
Adelaide's median house price now is above $1 million.
Yeah, crazy.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, for a little country town.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
With 2 mediocre football teams.
Well, it's interesting to see some of the changes. You've seen Sydney, the property market's always been going berserk. That's always been on the upward trend. Adelaide's taken off the past 5 years. Queensland, the past 3 years, even WA's absolutely taken off. Darwin, you're not seeing too much movement. And in Victoria, I'm seeing a few clients in Victoria at the moment where properties have actually been coming in lower and the valuations have been doing.
Yeah, Melbourne have been doing tough a bit.
I think eventually it'll pick up over there. I don't think it's a long-term thing. The market goes through cycles. Prior to 2-3 years ago, the Melbourne market was probably going up 6, 7, 8 years in a row. It's pretty normal for it to have its 2, 3, 4 year period of stagnation and then pick up again.
Yeah, I recently did a bit of a study on Melbourne apartments, for example, because everyone says avoid them. They're not selling. I looked at the cheapest 2-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, which is about $350,000, and the rental yield on that was about 7 to 8% or something like that. And it's you look at something like that and think, is this going to keep stagnant, or are we going to get to a point where something like that can actually go up in value?
Well, on that note, I've actually got a client who hasn't got a 2-bedroom apartment, but they've got a studio apartment in Melbourne. They bought it for around that price, about $350. We did a valuation. It's actually dropped So it's interesting how those apartments don't really pick up when there's an oversupply in the same area.
Yeah, oversupplied in the strata. But I'm thinking, have we finally come full circle where it was all about building a brand new house and land? Then it's all about renovating.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to get to apartments? Is that ever going to be a thing?
Well, I think maybe the only state where you see apartments actually do decent is probably Sydney.
Yeah, there's no other options really.
Your other states, the apartments they probably go up, but not as quickly as Sydney. Sydney, you do see a bit of growth in apartments, but it's the only state.
It depends on sort of what you're looking at as an investor as well. If you're looking at more of a capital growth side of things, apartments historically, they're just not going to be the answer, right? Whereas if you're looking at in short term, but even if you're looking at if you're looking at it from a rental yield perspective, and the ability to know that you will always have a tenant for that property because there will always be people who need to live in the CBD.
Yeah.
You know, people coming from overseas, people coming from interstate who have jobs in the city. Everyone's going to need to be living somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at property, if your investing goals is more from a rental yield perspective, then apartments really aren't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like ultimately, everything keeps getting more expensive. Apartments are staying the same. Will that pop into the equation?
Well, I think the flow-on effect. What I noticed that actually happens in quite a few states across Australia was house prices went up, got to a stage where it went up too much for some people to enter into the market. So then the next thing is townhouses and units started going up. So it's interesting to see how the flow-on effect of house and lands, like a dwelling with a big backyard, became unaffordable. So then your next entry level were pretty much your townhouses, your units, and then that sort of area then started seeing some growth too. So
here's a question for you. You got $2 million to spend. Are you buying a $2 million house in, like an outer suburb? Or are you buying 5 apartments in the 5 major cities in Australia right now?
If it was only out of those 2 options, I would go the $2 million house. If it was another question where you said, here's $2 million, what would you do? Then I would look for houses with lands and maybe buy 2 or 3 out of that $2 million.
Yeah.
But if it was out of the $2 million house over the apartments, because the apartments just aren't going to see as much growth. The only negative, though, is a $2 million house. The rent, if it's an investment, the rent's very unlikely to cover. Well, you wouldn't have a loan on it, I guess, if you're given $2 million. But if it was a loan against it, the rent wouldn't cover it or be close, be very heavily negatively geared.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Paddy?
I'm taking the $2 million house.
Really?
Any day of the week.
5 sets of rental income, no land tax, bit of negative gearing, not tickling you there?
Well, it's not negative gearing because there's no loan, right? Because you're giving me $2 million.
All right. All right, we see who the big broker is in the room.
I'm not just a pretty face, mate. Pretty face, big biceps, and a big brain. No, I'm definitely going for the $2 million.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
It'll see so much more capital growth. But yeah, the issue is maybe the rental side of things.
Yeah.
But what would you do, Dom?
Honestly, I think 90% of people would probably take the land.
Yeah.
I'd probably at this point would take the land, but I'm just wondering, will it get to a point where it's actually a conversation topic? It's a 50-50 kind of decision. Because right now it seems like there's one answer, and that's take the land. Look at the data over the last 10, 20 years. You'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
But are we getting to a point where housing is that unaffordable that just having location will trump land at some point?
Yeah.
So, of course, every situation is different, so there's no true answer.
Yep.
I'd take the land, but, keep an eye out for the apartments. They might be coming in. Who knows?
I think it's just circumstantial.
Yeah,
I think it's circumstantial at the end of the day. Owner-occupiers, if you're a young couple or if you're a young person who's wanting to buy their first house, it's relatively unrealistic that you'll be able to buy something you want in the area you want. And if you just want to get in, get away from mum and dad, establish a level of independence, an apartment might not be a terrible idea. But you just have to understand and be aware and be educated on the risk of the fact that the property probably won't grow in value. Or if it does, it might not be much.
Yeah. But it's better than renting.
Yeah, true.
I feel like in Sydney, that has already happened. Houses have gone up that much that families are living in apartments.
Yeah.
That's considered like normal in Sydney.
I think apartments have their own ecosystem in Sydney compared to the rest of Australia. Yeah.
Correct. Where it's probably only starting to happen a little bit in some of the other states where maybe some families are starting to live in apartments just due to budget. But it'd be interesting, like you said, to see if the house prices keep going up, if that becomes a normal in other states, you know?
So you're a homeowner, you've got a mortgage, or you're someone that's looking to buy a property. Now that there's been a rate cut, Paddy, what am I doing?
This is the most important thing that you need to do now there has been a rate cut, is you need to evaluate your mortgage with a broker. You could be leaving so many options and so much money on the table by not doing that.
Why is right now more important than a few months ago?
Because so much has changed. Banks are offering new discounts to new customers coming on board. Those existing customers, they're only getting the discount of the rate cut. So you could be leaving that money on the table by going and speaking to this other bank, and that you won't know to do that unless you speak to your broker.
Now that there's been a rate cut, does that mean everyone's mortgage will go down?
It should, but it doesn't.
I've got a story for you guys.
Go ahead.
I'm a mortgage broker, right?
Are you?
I am.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's crazy.
That's blowing my fucking mind.
So this very building that we're sitting in. So what happened in February?
There was a rate cut.
There was a rate cut, right? Now, what's my title of an occupation?
Director/finance broker.
Would you think that I would be on top of getting the rate cut with my bank?
You're not on top of your laundry, let alone your loans.
But you would think, broker, connections, everything.
Yeah, you'd think.
Would you believe me if I told you that the very building that we're in, the loan for it, my rate did not reduce in February at all.
Oh, what?
At all.
How did you let that slide?
I'm onto it. I emailed my bank, and it took me a month. I assumed it would happen, given the assumption of the rate drop, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at my statement, it didn't go down. Then I emailed them, and they came back to me. They're like, we feel the rate is already competitive. So our position is to not reduce the rate again, or not reduce the rates at all with this rate cut.
Well, congratulations, your bank. You've just lost a client.
Yeah, so think of it. Me, mortgage broker, they didn't reduce my rate.
Yeah.
So imagine, if it didn't happen to me, then it could.
Well, this is where you stuffed up. Is you assumed, right? What happens when you assume? You make an ass out of you and me. Great saying, by the way.
God.
That's the best. I don't. It's,
my God.
I've heard it from somewhere, but I don't. It's awesome. I use it all the time. But the point remains is that you have to be proactive in checking that these discounts apply to you.
I did make an ass out of you and me, but I still followed up. I still emailed. I called. They didn't budge at all.
What?
So then you look at refinancing.
Well, on this topic, the other interesting thing that we noticed in February this year was a lot of banks passed on the rate cut, but didn't update people's repayment according to the lower interest rate.
Yeah.
So they was charging people the same monthly repayment. They were charging less interest though, but it just means people were essentially paying a little bit extra on their mortgage.
I remember you came to me with that.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if that happens again. But
Probably will.
Well, that's when you either got to refinance or call the bank and say, hey, can you recalculate the repayment based on the new interest rate.
I remember you coming to my office telling me that, and I'm like, nah, Rob, that's not a thing.
Crazy.
That's a thing. We looked into it, and it's a thing. Their default position is keep your repayments the same. Most lenders' default position right now is, sure, reduce your interest rate a little bit, but your repayments, they can stay the same. If you want lower repayments, well, you can call us.
Yeah. Well, not everyone's in a position to cash flow-wise to pay extra. So having their repayment based on their actual rate can be better for a lot of people to have that lower repayment.
Yeah.
If you asked 100 Australians, now that there's a rate cut, would you like lower repayments or the same? What do you think most people are going to say?
No, lower repayments for
Yeah,
sure.
lower repayments, no brainer.
So why are the banks not doing this?
I think they just like the idea of you paying off more of the principal, but
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
technically, it's not a bad thing, and you should always be recommending to people to pay their mortgages off quicker than they can, right? The interest on owner-occupied loans especially is just dead money. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more just it's just difficult for people who don't have that sort of cash flow to maintain. If they're expecting that their repayments will drop, right? They've made decisions based off of that assumption. And then all of a sudden that direct debit comes out and it's the same repayment. That's the difference between them being able to take their kids out for a meal at the pub or going to the footy with their mates, or even just spending, like, they're getting that extra coffee that they now all of a sudden can't do because they weren't proactive and didn't actually realize that it was making that change.
I just find it shady. I'd like to open my app and there'd be a big question saying, rates have reduced. Would you like your payments to reduce as well? Yes, no.
Yeah, they should give you the option instead of the default option being that they just don't update your repayment.
Yeah. Yes, I'd like another $40 a week. I can now pay for my broccoli. And
I was going to say, you could buy two cartons of eggs for
I can buy my
$40.
cartons of eggs.
True.
No, really, I can do an Uber Eats now. That's probably what it means. But
What's your go-to Uber Eats order?
I've actually stopped Uber Eats
Why?
at the moment because of my cholesterol problems.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're an old man.
I'm an old man. But what was my Uber Eats order? Maybe some Indian food. Give me some curry.
Oh, but is it real? Like, or is it just butter chicken?
No, I like the other ones. I like some vindaloo and some Rogan Josh.
Yeah,
Rogan Josh is good.
Yeah.
But and butter chicken. Yeah.
What about you, Rob? What was your go-to Uber Eats order? I know you're a bit of a HJ's man. I know you probably contributed to a lot of Hungry Jack's revenue in the last couple of years.
I do love a good burger. I do have to say, me and my partner reviewed our living expenses, and we definitely did have a bit of an Uber Eats addiction at one point. But I have cut it down a bit. But I'm probably doing an Uber Eats order maybe once a week, sometimes twice if we're feeling a bit cheeky. But
you're a healthy guy, Rob.
Yeah, it's just when life's busy, sometimes Uber Eats saves you. But
well, this isn't a promotion for Uber Eats.
Yeah, I know.
Let's go with DoorDash.
If you want to save for a house, do not get Uber Eats. But don't get Uber Eats. But my order would probably be, I love pizza. You know, I've got Italian heritage from my dad, so
you can just tell by looking at that nose.
The big Italian nose, it is a thing.
So, Rob, with that big Italian nose,
am I to sniff out what's going to happen with the market next?
Well, this is the thing that really stuck with me, that really hit me, to be honest. So rates dropped in February.
Yep.
Rates dropped in May big time. They're predicting a lot more rate drops. Property has been steadily either growing or maintaining.
Yep.
If rates drop another 1%, what happens?
Well, look, the big thing with the property market is there's a lot of people that are doom and gloom and think that if there's uncertainty in the market that property could drop. But we learned during COVID that the property market in Australia is so resilient. There's simply not enough houses for sale for how many people are looking to buy. So for me personally, my big tip right now would be try buy a property now.
Now.
The reason I say this is house prices are just going to keep going up because there's not enough supply and there's too many buyers. And as soon as you keep getting more and more rate cuts, people get more borrowing capacity. They've got access to more money. So the property market's going to see more activity, more buyers. So I think before rates drop too low, people should be getting their pre-approvals in right now and they should be on the hunt every weekend. Because if you go try to buy a property now as opposed to 6-7 months from now, the entry level of the area you're looking to buy could be 50, 60, 70K higher, which is a lot of money in the grand scheme of things.
No, it is. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, mate.
Yeah, let's be real. In this day and age with technology and transparency, there's no opportunities like there were 20, 30 years ago probably don't exist. But there is something called consumer lag where there was a rate drop today. Borrowing capacity has just increased. How long before people take advantage of it? Not every man and his dog is going to be seeing their broker getting pre-approved right now and at an auction this weekend with that rate factored in. The likelihood is that consumer is about 2 to 3 months away. So if you're a consumer that's in the market now, you might be able to buy in that small window before there's that 3 or 5% increase. And I know 3 to 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 or 5% on a million, 1.5 million, it honestly is a lot of money.
Yeah.
To further your point, to reiterate what you're saying, is there's a classic saying, the best time to buy a house was 30 years ago, right? The second best time is right now.
Yeah.
You know, the opportunity cost, like the amount of times I hear from clients and just people in general around the street saying that, oh, I just want to wait until rates go down.
Yeah.
I just want to wait until rates go down, then I'll have more money to buy. But guess what? If you wait until rates go down because you want more money, guess who else has more money? Everyone else.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing the same thing. So go now. Do it now.
I want to pay you out for sounding like a real estate agent, but the reality of it is you're kind of right.
Don't ever call me a real estate agent ever again.
Don't eat shit, Eric.
I have ethics.
You're not good looking enough to be a real estate agent.
Oh, that's not what your mum said. Sorry, it was too easy.
Well, Rob, you came to me with a pretty interesting term the other day. At first, I thought it was some sort of medical disease, but what was it again?
Well, it's so basically, I've got this. Well, he's not a client; it's a lead, you could say. I've been speaking to this guy on and off for about a year and a half. So who approached me, Rob, I'm thinking of buying a house. Then when it comes to actually lodging the pre-approval and looking at houses, he would just overthink things and get put off. And this has been ongoing for a year and a half. And if he bought a house a year and a half ago when he first come to me, for the area he's looking, he probably would have paid about 800K. Now for that particular area, it's about 1.1 million where he's looking.
I thought you were going to say like 50K increase.
So It's funny that the term that I've given for this client is he's got a disease that I call analysis paralysis.
Bless you.
It's just thank you, and it's just a
sounds like something
just a
else.
term for basically he's an overthinker. Like what if property goes down, Rob, or what if he'll just look for any reason to talk himself out of doing it.
But Rob, he's just doing his homework and wants to be well versed in the market before he makes his decision, right?
Well, now he's going to have to save a lot more to get into that area, or he can't even get into that area now, depending on his situation. So
there's like the sweet spot, hey, between doing your homework and then getting analysis paralysis.
Sounds like a Harry Potter spell. Analysis paralysis.
Well, look, with buying property, there's always a bit of risk. Like, and all you can do your homework. The best thing you can do is minimize the risk, by doing your homework. But there's always going to be a bit of risk. So if you're buying a property and you think there's a 10% risk, that's a lot better than buying another property without doing your homework that could have a 40, 50% risk involved with the type of property or where you're buying. But if people keep talking themselves out of this, they're just never going to buy a property.
Yeah, when you stand still, you get left behind, right?
Well, even, it's pretty similar to the story I just said, but I've got another investor earlier this year. He wanted to wait for rate cuts before he bought his next investment. The issue is now the house prices have probably already gone up since January when we spoke earlier in the year. He's up against more buyers. So it's just...
All he's saying is, hey, Rob, I want to wait till there's way more people interested in property before I buy a property.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. And Paddy, we actually, a couple of years back, I have to remind you of some analysis paralysis we had when we did our toilet paper analysis.
Yes, that's burnt into my memory.
So a good example of us maybe looking into things too much was 5 years ago when we wanted to buy toilet paper for the office a year in advance.
Yeah, so being the cheapskate that you are... And this was before toilet paper was as expensive as it was now.
Yeah, this is pre-COVID.
Yep. And I do love an Excel spreadsheet, and I do love some Excel formulas. We designed a spreadsheet that put together the cost per ply of toilet paper, and we bought the option that had the cheapest cost per ply.
But multiple ply though.
But it was obviously multiple ply.
Let's get that straight.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't do that one ply.
No, not one ply.
You go that one ply, your finger goes straight through. You got to be double plying.
Yeah. You end up.
It's got to be.
But you
It's
also
at least got to be 2 ply. 1 ply is basically you're wiping your bum with nothing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. You finger yourself financially and literally. So.
But the point I was trying to make before we started getting off track.
Sorry.
We sunk a good 3-4 hours into the toilet paper analysis.
Some of the worst hours of my life.
But we saved about $150. But looking back, was that time worth it? Did the market move in that time?
You'd hope so. Oh, God. I think I still have that on my computer, actually. I'd have to look it up. Cost per ply. What a joke.
All right. So right now, you're a client. You know there's a rate cut. You know there's something you have to be doing. You opt in, or you want to reach out to Rob or Paddy. Rob, what are you gonna go through with your client? And you know what? We don't want you to be on the phone to a client for 30, 40 minutes. You've got 10 minutes on a phone call to a client right now. What are you gonna do?
I'm going to conduct a quick fact find to find out about that client. I'm going to ask that client what their financial goals are to make sure whatever I recommend or the plan that we put in place is tailored to what they're looking to do. But basically out of that chat, I'll already have a bit of an idea of, which lender we might be looking at, what their rough borrowing capacity could be, what sort of interest rates and options they have. And that's just honestly in 10 easy minutes on the phone.
Yeah. What about you, Paddy? You've got 10 minutes with a client who's eager to speak to you after this rate cut. What do you want to leave them with after that 10 minutes?
It's pretty similar to what Rob mentioned, finding out a bit more about what they do. But more importantly, I want them to leave the phone call after 10 minutes, just knowing that they can trust me.
Yeah.
Knowing that I've created that level of trust with this client that they say, okay, I feel comfortable talking to Patrick and I feel comfortable going ahead with the route that Patrick has set out. That's the biggest thing. So that's done by just listening to them, just listening to what they want to do. I'll say, look, you got 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, tell me exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can articulate it within that 30 seconds. And then that leaves the rest of the time for me to actually figure out how we can achieve that. It might take a bit longer after the phone, but they don't need to be on the phone for the entire time that I'm working it out.
Yeah.
I just need to properly understand where they're at right now and where they want to go.
Yeah.
Where they want to be, what type of investor, what type of person do they want to be, especially mainly from a property perspective. We got a first home buyer who wants to create a portfolio of 5 or 6 properties.
Yeah. I think
how do we do that?
As a homeowner right now, if you set aside 10 minutes and you're like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to buy a house. This is my current position. I'd also like to save some money. 10 minutes of just going over that, they're going to be left with, okay, this is the top deal. This will save you X amount. This is your borrowing capacity right now, how much you can borrow, how much equity you have to get to your goal. Yes, you can do it. Or, hey, we need 1-2 rate cuts likely to happen in this day. That plan can provide so much clarity for a client. If you have a goal of buying a property, you need to see the end goal. You can't just be up in the air. You need to actually be told by someone how you can get there.
Yeah, you need to set those goalposts.
Yeah.
The biggest issue is just people just can't procrastinate. Just take action now. There's no benefit of waiting to see if there's one of the key things I hear from a lot of people, and it's interesting because I'll speak to these people and they're on high interest rates and I'll show them a deal I can bring to them that is going to save them thousands per year. I'm going to wait for more rate cuts and see what happens with the deals that are available. But the thing is, these people just keep waiting. They keep sitting on a higher interest rate where they're paying the bank more interest. If they refinance there and then, they would have already saved between then and now. And generally, if you refinance onto the best rate today on a variable, if there are rate cuts, the market just shifts by the rate cut usually. So if you're on the best rate today, you're usually on the best rate after the rate cut too.
Yeah.
So people just need the best thing to do is action. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait. There's no benefit.
There's just always a better deal, isn't there?
Yeah.
There just always is. And the reality of it is the longer you've had your deal, the more it's out of the market. You need to be looking at this stuff really every 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah. Mainly the people that haven't reviewed their mortgage for the last year and a half. Last year and a half, some people still be on some pretty sharp deals. If it's been longer than 18 months,
see it later.
Yeah, they're going to be 30, 40 basis points probably above the best rate on the market for a variable. So
yeah. All right, guys, that's some valuable info. Now, something to end on, and this is the big question that everyone really wants to get to the bottom of. 1 gorilla or 100 men?
Oh.
I want to hear everyone's answers, and I've got an answer for this as well. So,
Rob, do you want to go first?
I feel like it's case by case. And what I mean by that is, all right, if 100 men attack a gorilla at the same time, everyone runs in, you'd think maybe the gorilla's got no chance. But is that even possible for them all to attack at the same time? And because if they're doing it in sequences of like 15 men run in, gorilla's pretty strong. They might be able to one swing gets this person, one gets the other.
A few people would definitely die though.
Yeah, like it depends how tactical the 100 people attacking are. And I feel like it depends on the build. If they're, small like Paddy, then they've probably got no chance. But if they're big like me, then I think we could maybe get that gorilla.
How big it?
So a bit of a fence sitter answer there by Rob. How about you, Paddy?
It wasn't an answer. It was just a dig at me. What did you answer? What was your answer? Gorilla or men?
Oh, if the right plan is set out, the 100 men, I would be thinking.
Look, I agree.
100 robbers.
I agree with the men. I don't agree with the comparisons between us. But yeah, it has to be the men.
You think it's the men?
It has to be the men. But it also does depend on, if you've got one man going to the gorilla after another, like if it's one after the other, then the gorilla will kill them all.
Yeah, needs to be
It needs to be. They need to swarm.
simultaneous, everyone running in, swinging punches at the same time.
Let me throw a spanner into the works here. What if it's 100 men? They all speak different languages, if there's even 100 languages in the world, which I'm not sure of.
Oh, dude, there definitely would be.
Okay, there definitely would. Let's say these men cannot communicate verbally. Who's winning?
I don't think they need to. I think instincts will kick in and they'll still just
hand signals.
Sign language.
Run in, go. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Dom?
Oh, I think it has to be the men. Oh, call me biased.
Yeah,
but I think it's the men. I think you put a bunch of people in a room, they can work it out. They'll eventually coordinate, come up with a strategy. I think the gorilla at the start is heavily favoured. He's going to come out swinging, probably going to kill a few men.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. 100 men, but there will have to be like 30 to 40 casualties.
Oh, yeah.
You'd have to think. Before they win, they would lose a lot of lives.
Gorilla's killing 20, 30 people easily.
Yes.
It would also depend on like the fear level of the people attacking the gorilla. Because if you're like gorillas are scary. If you've got 100 people who are scared of this gorilla, they're gonna be running away quicker than Dom's hairline.
You can't be talking about that on camera.
What did he say to me before?
Well, I'm pretty happy. I've still got my hairline. I've got some guns
screwed.
here, Paddy.
I'm screwed.
I think we're all screwed.
I'm screwed.
But yeah, I think the men take it out. I think what goes down is the men will go first, 20, 30 die. The gorilla will eventually get fatigued, and then eventually the men will coordinate on different angles.
Yeah.
A few more casualties, few injuries, but they'll get the job done.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate question of life, isn't it?
It is. It's
an important one.
Who would win?
But the real ultimate question in life is, last question before we end this, what will the cash rate be before the end of 2025?
Are we all making predictions? Is that what?
Let's have a
is
prediction.
That what we're about to do?
I want to hear a prediction. Before the end of 2025,
Ooh.
what will the cash rate be?
I don't think it'll go below 3%.
Yep.
I think it'll be close to 3, but not below it.
I'm calling 3.1.
You're calling 3.1?
I'm calling 3.10, which is, pretty much that means what? We've chipped off...
Yeah, we've chipped off about 1%.
1.25 since January in the calendar year.
I'm going to go 3.35%. I don't think it's got that much steam. I think there'll be the hype of more, but I think it'll sit at about that rate for a little while, but there'll be more next year.
Just depends too a bit on human behaviour. Like this rate cut could get everyone spending again. Maybe the inflation rate starts to pop up a little bit, and then maybe the rate cuts are going to be a little bit slower than they've predicted for now.
They do have to be very delicate. They do have to. The RBA have to be very delicate about how they handle this. So
can't be too bullish. If they cut them too much, everyone will start spending money like crazy again, and it puts us into the cycle where it needs to go up again too quick.
Yeah, Rob's Uber Eats spending is going to double. And Paddy's.
That's it.
What would you even spend money on?
I don't really know.
Protein supplements.
Yeah, Paddy's protein.
I'll spend all my money on protein supplements because I want to get as big as Rob.
Yeah, you got a couple of years to get there, mate.
But before we finish, so what you said 3.35.
3.35, I think.
You've put 3.
3.1.
Oh, sorry,
0.
3.1. 3.1. Yep. Let's go with me. I'll put it at 3.
You reckon that 10 basis point?
Yeah,
because it's like an uneven number.
Let's make this interesting.
Right.
Whoever's closest, the other two has to do something for them.
let's keep it simple. Maybe if I get it right, you two have to take me out for dinner or vice versa or something.
Oh, that's boring.
No, okay. What do you
How
want
about,
to
how
do?
about cleaning the car?
Oh, that's good.
So
So if I get it right or closest to it, you two have to clean my car inside and out.
okay.
Okay. And then we record that video and we post it on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I like that.
Oh, so let's
I like
clarify
that.
this again. I'm 3.35.
I'm 3.10.
And I'm 3.
Okay.
So really your guess is just going to cover anything.
But I'm
below
incredibly
3.1.
bearish, though. I'm expecting rates to come down hard.
Okay.
So we'll see. And
Okay.
No, I'm
That
pretty,
makes sense.
I'm pretty messy, guys. So.
I hope you guys look good in bikinis, man.
I was
My
already
car
following
is
these rate cuts,
330.
but now that makes it a lot more interesting. I'm not going to clean my car for the rest of the year now.
I don't think anyone's cleaning their car.
Which one of your cars would Rob clean?
I don't know.
You reckon we'll have a shot at the R8?
Well, I don't know about that one. I haven't driven that for a few months. I'm going with the Yaris actually.
The Yaris.
The Yaris.
What's that?
The Yaris that we put the dogs in before we walk them.
Oh,
No, you can't call them dogs. You can't call them dogs. They're like this big, mate. They're big rats. Sorry, Lexi.
Well, there we go, guys. Rate cut today. You've heard some expert advice and some opinions about the matter. Let's see where we go from here. But the biggest takeaway is it's time to really speak to someone. Get on the phone, just a 10-minute chat. Just find out what the hell you're doing, your position right now. Find out your equity, find out your borrowing capacity, and find out what is the best deal that you could be on and how much that's going to save you. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.